what the former head of the CIA, John Brennan, said on camera at the Council on Foreign Relations was very clear. They intend to use stratospheric aerosol injections in order to basically mitigate global warming. That's what they just told us. That was a very clear statement. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Stratospheric aerosol injection. Stratospheric aerosol injection is a proposed method of solar geoengineering or solar radiation modification to reduce global warming. This would introduce aerosols into the stratosphere to create a cooling effect via global dimming and increased albedo, which occurs naturally from volcanic winter. Let's go to the beginning of that sentence one more time. It's a proposed method of solar geoengineering by injecting aerosols into the air. Now let's go to the conspiracy theory side. Consisting of chemical or biological agents, that's what aerosols are, for solar radiation management. That's interesting. It says it right here. Solar radiation modification, management. It's the same thing. So basically, what they've agreed and declassified to the world on the video that you just saw says that this is basically this. Therefore, this part of the sentence should be deleted because it's saying the same exact thing on both sides. I'm going to show you a couple more videos before we continue because they will blow your mind. For anybody that still doesn't understand the difference between chemicals and water, one goes away a whole lot quicker than the other. You could think about it like this.
This is material being put in the atmosphere, and I could compare this with a skywriter. When you see someone doing skywriting, that's not water vapor. It's material that sticks.
Again.
That's not water vapor. It's material that sticks.
It's no different. It stays there for a long time. There are some that stay there and dissipate very quickly. We see those right above us. And there are some that stay there and just start spreading out. Now the question is, why would anybody want something like that to happen? And now we go to our best friend, our good buddy, Bill Gates.
Bill Gates is backing the first high-altitude experiment of one radical climate change solution, creating a massive chemical cloud that could cool the Earth.
A massive chemical cloud.
Solar geoengineering, and it's highly controversial. It would look something like this. Thousands of planes would fly very high and use nozzles to inject millions of tons of light-reflecting particles into the stratosphere. It would create a thin chemical cloud of those particles around the whole planet, blocking some sunlight from reaching the surface. It would mimic a giant volcanic eruption, which we know cools the Earth.
Now, that's all fun and all, but there are certain parts that they don't tell you. And what they don't tell you is what the weatherman was actually fired for. And here is what he has to share.
What they're doing is selling these programs to the public as a way to mitigate global warming. And the theory is putting these chemicals into our sky will actually reflect sun back into space and thus cool the planet. The problem with this is at night, the aerosols actually act as a blanket and they trap heat. In the past 10 to 15 years, we've seen a great increase in nighttime highs.
Now, before I continue, because we're not done with the evidence, many of you watching this are probably 40, 50 plus based on what YouTube tells me my analytics and demographic are. You guys were alive in times where there were airplanes 40 years ago. Do you remember the clouds looking like they do? Do you remember clouds, trails that don't dissipate and start going wider and wider and wider, creating really weird patterns in the sky? Because anybody that I asked, if you don't believe anything that you see today, they've said the same thing. We did not see that. Now, if that's not enough for you, let's keep going. There are operations already from the 1970s, 50 years ago, where they say, we did this. You can Google it.
During the Vietnam War, Operation Popeye was a top-secret campaign that successfully weaponized the weather, causing extreme flooding in supply lines.
One more time.
During the Vietnam War, Operation Popeye was a top-secret campaign that successfully weaponized the weather, causing extreme flooding in supply lines.
Remember that term, weaponizing the weather. Now let's go here for a second. Operation Popeye. This is something spoken about. Operation Popeye, which stands for Project Controlled Weather. It's crazy. Project Control Weather Popeye Motor Pool Intermediary, whatever, was a military cloud seeding project carried out by the U.S. Air Force during the Vietnam War from 1967 to 1972. The highly classified program attempted to extend the monsoon season over specific areas of the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which is in Vietnam, in order to disrupt North Vietnamese military supplies by softening road services and causing landslides. And if that's still not enough for you, I'm not done. We got more. And it has to do with this idea of weaponizing the weather. It's been shown and declassified.
In 1996, a detailed research paper was delivered to the Air Force outlining steps to own the weather by 2025 for military purposes. A 2008 workshop at the Council on Foreign Relations discussed reversing global warming by geoengineering. They also pointed out the significant risks it could impose worldwide.
Do you see what that says? All of these geoengineering strategies involve great uncertainty and carry significant risks. I wonder, could they cause the problems that we're seeing in the world? They may not work as expected, no kidding, imposing large unintended consequences on the climate system. Very interesting. And then that could impose disaster on hundreds of millions of people. Now, when you combine everything that I just showed you with what I showed you earlier from the disclosure series, doesn't it make a little more sense? I know it sounds crazy, and it sounded crazy at the time, but everything is starting to connect. Unfortunately, I wish I was wrong about these things, but the fact is I'm not. And it's not because I'm smarter than anybody. It's because they are telling us what they're doing. And the only difference between someone who knows and somebody who doesn't is not how smart you are, but how much you actually pay attention to what's going on. I'm going to show that trailer one more time because everything that you just saw is everything that was said. Here it is.
I don't know if you're paying attention lately. There's a lot of natural disasters. Everything that you see, for example, the floods in Australia that happened recently. Everything you see there is man-made. For them to create a tsunami, it's very simple. If you remember, we spoke about EMLP. That's the technology that they have. You could use nuclear bomb to create tsunamis. It happened in Congo a few months ago. We were supposed to get a tsunami on the east coast of the United States, especially New York Harbor to Boston Harbor. I'm talking about a tsunami that the world never heard or seen before. It was stopped.
How do you stop and reduce natural disaster? Better yet, how did you stop what was supposed to hit New York and Boston?
So it doesn't sound so crazy anymore, does it? Let's make something very clear. And I'm going to do my best to make it clear while speaking appropriately with where I'm at right now. What you are seeing around the world is not normal. What you are seeing around the world is intended to happen. And the only reason why people know about them